Have you ever walked into a room you've seen 100 times and immediately noticed that a single picture frame is tilted by just a few degrees? Or perhaps you're the person in the group who, while everyone else is laughing at a joke, Pausido quietly observes the split-second flash of discomfort on the face of the person the joke was about. Maybe you can't help but notice the exact moment the ambient hum of the refrigerator stops. Or you can pinpoint the subtle shift in your partner's tone of voice, long before they even realize they're upset. If you're nodding along, chances are you are one of those people. The kind who notice every single, small detail. The world often praises big-picture thinkers, leaving those of us who live in the minutiae feeling a bit, well, particular, or maybe even a little high-strung. But this isn't just a quirk, or a sign of being overly fastidious. This deep, almost instinctive level of observation is rooted in some fascinating psychological and neurological mechanisms, and it shapes your entire experience of the world in profound ways. We usually assume that paying attention to details is just trying harder. But what if it's not a choice? What if some brains are fundamentally wired to process the world in high definition, while everyone else is viewing it in standard resolution? It's tempting to think of this trait simply as paying better attention. Sorry, as if it's a moral failing that everyone else is just lazy. But that's not quite right. It's more helpful to imagine the human brain as having a sophisticated filtering system. Every single moment, our senses are being absolutely bombarded with information. Colors, sounds, smells, textures, subtle social cues, temperature changes. If your brain processed all of it, you'd be utterly overwhelmed, unable to function. It would be like trying to listen to 50 conversations simultaneously. So, our brains have developed an amazing mechanism, primarily governed by a region called the thalamus, which acts as a gatekeeper. It decides what information is relevant and passes it on to the conscious mind, and what is noise that can be ignored. For most people, this filter is robust and efficient. They see the forest, they hear the song, they understand the conversation. The details, the specific vein patterns on a leaf, the subtle bass line, the slight pause between words, are filtered out as background noise. But for the people who notice everything, this gatekeeper is perhaps a little less restrictive, more permissive. It's letting through the faint scent of rain and the visual clutter on the desk, and the specific way the presenter is fidgeting, all alongside the main message. It's not that you're trying harder, it's that your filter is letting through a much richer stream of raw data. This concept isn't just theoretical. It's central to a major psychological construct known as sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. You might have heard the term highly sensitive person, or HSP, popularized by psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron. SPS is not a disorder or a diagnosis. It's a foundational personality trait found in about 15 to 20% of the human population, and in many animal species as well. People high in this trait have a nervous system that is simply more attuned to stimuli. Neuroimaging studies have actually shown that when HSPs process information, they show increased activation in brain areas associated with deep processing, attention, and empathy, like the right insula and the prefrontal cortex. While another person is casually glancing at a landscape, your brain is doing heavy cognitive lifting, analyzing the specific hues of green, the texture of the light, the subtle movement of the branches. You aren't just looking, you are deeply processing. It's less about having supersight and more about having a remarkably complex processing department that refuses to ignore the data. We should also take a moment to consider why evolution would preserve such a trait. On the surface, being easily distracted by the flicker of a distant light seems like a drawback. But let's rewind. Picture our early ancestors on the African savanna. Most of the tribe needed to be focused on the immediate task: the hunt, the gathering, the general movement. They needed a good filter. But the tribe also desperately needed the detail-oriented person. They were the ones who noticed the slight, unusual bend of a specific blade of grass, signaling that a predator had passed by. They were the ones who heard the faint, distant crackle of dry brush that others missed. They were the original early warning system. Your hyper-awareness was invaluable for survival. Today you aren't spotting tigers, but your ancient spotter brain is still active. It's just adapted to a modern environment. You're the one who spots the tiny error in the contract that could save the company thousands. The person who senses that a critical project is veering off course based on one or two subtle comments. Or the friend who notices that someone in the group is being quietly excluded and steps in to fix it. This trait isn't a glitch. It was a feature. a necessary, life-saving feature. But, as any detail-oriented person will tell you, this constant intake comes at a cost. There's a beautiful burden that comes with seeing the world in such sharp focus. The main cost is cognitive load. If you are constantly processing a tsunami of detail, emotional subtext, visual noise, faint sounds, your mental hard drive fills up very, very fast. This is why many people with this trait struggle in loud, crowded, or intensely stimulating environments, like chaotic offices or high-energy parties. It's not social anxiety necessarily, it's sensory overwhelm. When you can't turn down the incoming feed, it can feel like having 50 browser tabs open in your brain, all playing different audio, and you don't know which one to close. This overload often manifests as anxiety. The need to control or fix every single detail isn't just a personality quirk. It's often a coping strategy. In a chaotic world, controlling the tiny details you can see, like aligning the salt and pepper shakers perfectly, or ensuring every word in an email is precisely correct, offers a temporary sense of order and safety. It's the brain trying to synthesize meaning from a deluge of data. It's not that you want to be fussy. It's that the visual or emotional disharmony feels almost physically painful to you. This also deeply impacts relationships. Notice how easily you can read a room. You often know how someone is feeling long before they express it, simply by processing the subtle shifts in their body language, the micro-expressions that flash across their face, or the slight hesitation in their voice. This capacity gives you a profound sense of empathy. You are naturally good at comforting people because you get it. But it can also make you feel like a mind reader, which can be exhausting for you, and sometimes unnerving for others. Conversely, this detail fixation can be a source of conflict. When you comment on how the dishwasher was loaded wrong, or that the laundry wasn't folded properly, you aren't trying to be difficult. To you, it isn't invisible. It jumps out at you like a loud, dissonant chord in a symphony. It causes a tiny mental hiccup that begs to be corrected. But to your partner, who truly didn't see it, it feels like constant, unnecessary criticism. Bridging this gap, realizing that your detail is their background noise, is one of the hardest but most essential lessons for maintaining relational peace. Given all this, I think it's crucial to reframe how we view this trait. This is not a pathology. This is not something to fix. This deep attention to detail is precisely the origin of excellence and mastery. Think of the great artists, musicians, scientists, or novelists. They aren't just looking at the broad brushstrokes. They are obsessed with the textures, the light, the comma, the precise shade of an emotion. A master chef can identify the one ingredient missing by tasting a complex sauce. A therapist can listen to the subtext of what a patient is not saying. You see the richness of life that most people completely skate over. You appreciate the craftsmanship in a well-made object, the hidden harmonies in a song, the subtle layers of color in a sunset that others just call red. This capacity for deep aesthetic and emotional appreciation is rare and beautiful. It means you aren't just skimming the surface of existence. You are actively diving into its depths. You are the curator of life's subtle textures. So, how do you live with this spotter brain without it driving you to total exhaustion? The key, I believe, is learning a kind of dynamic balance. You have to recognize that your nervous system is a finely tuned instrument, and it needs careful management. It's not about fighting your nature or trying to ignore things, which is likely impossible. It's about accepting that you have this powerful intake, and consciously building in rest. If you've spent all day processing at full resolution, you need to deliberately find environments that are low resolution. Quiet, dim, soft, predictable. You have to permit yourself to retreat from the world, to let your processing system clear its cache. It's also about developing perspective. It's acknowledging your natural tendency to get lost in the undergrowth, and then consciously reminding yourself to look up and see the forest. It's allowing your details to exist, like the crooked picture or the typo, without automatically assigning it a value of failure or feeling a compulsive need to correct it. You can learn to allow a certain level of disharmony to exist in the world, recognizing that while you can see it, it doesn't always require your intervention. Ultimately, being the person who notices every small detail means you possess a remarkably rich, nuanced, and multifaceted experience of reality. You aren't just passing through the world, you are truly witnessing it, in all its chaotic, beautiful complexity. You are the person who sees the story that the cracks in the pavement are telling. It is demanding, absolutely. It can be confusing and overwhelming, but it is also incredibly profound. You aren't just an observer, you are an expert observer. And the next time you feel overwhelmed by the flicker of a distant light or a slightly off-key note, try to remember, it's not because you're too sensitive. It's because your brain has a profound appreciation for complexity, and it's busy witnessing the world in full resolution. And that, in itself, is something truly worthy of notice. I'm curious, what is that one tiny detail you always spot that everyone else seems to miss? The one that you just can't unsee? Let me know in the comments. We can all appreciate the subtle world together. Thanks for watching.